If McLaren wanted to steal Red Bull's dominance, they just took the most important piece. Not the driver. Not the car. The brain behind everything. Gianpiero Lambiase, the man who guided Verstappen to 4 world championships, is leaving Red Bull and heading straight into McLaren's future. Nearly a decade of perfect communication. Over 60 victories together. Every race decided by one voice, at 300 kilometers per hour. And now, that voice is switching sides. But here's what makes this even more shocking. McLaren didn't just sign him as an engineer. They're preparing him to lead, to control, to rebuild an entire team, using the exact system that made Red Bull unbeatable. That's not a transfer. That's a takeover in slow motion. Because in Formula 1, when you understand how a team wins, you don't need to copy them. You can replace them. And right now, that process has already started. This is not just about Lambiase leaving. It's about where he's going, and what that creates. Because McLaren didn't wake up one day and decide to sign him. This has been building for years. Quietly. Strategically. Piece by piece. First, they took key figures from Red Bull. People who understood the design philosophy. The internal processes. The way decisions are made under pressure. Then, they strengthened their structure. Improved the car. Became competitive again. Started fighting at the front. But something was still missing. The final layer. The one that connects everything on race day. And that layer was Lambiase. Because he's not just another engineer. He's the bridge between data and instinct. Between strategy and execution. Between chaos and control. And now, that bridge is moving. From Red Bull to McLaren. But here's where it becomes much bigger than just one move. Because Lambiase is not arriving to adapt. He's arriving to lead. To shape the team. To install the same precision, the same communication, the same decision-making system that made Red Bull dominant. That's the real objective. Not to copy Red Bull. To rebuild it. But in a different environment. With fewer internal issues. With a fresh structure. With momentum already on their side. And this is where things start to connect in a way that feels almost too perfect. Because if you were building the ideal team for the future, you wouldn't just sign talent. You would sign familiarity. You would bring in people who already know how to win together. And McLaren is doing exactly that. Not loudly. Not aggressively. But with absolute precision. And now, they have the most important piece of all. The one person who knows exactly how to operate at the highest level. With the most demanding driver on the grid. Max Verstappen. And this is where the real question begins. Because you don't build this kind of structure without a purpose. You don't assemble these pieces without a target. And in Formula 1, there is only one target that justifies this level of preparation. One driver who can turn a strong team into a dominant one. One driver who already knows exactly how the system works. So now the situation becomes very clear. Red Bull is losing the people who built its success. McLaren is gaining them. Red Bull is trying to hold its structure together. McLaren is building a new one, based on that same blueprint. And right in the middle of that shift is a possibility that nobody can ignore anymore. Because if the system moves, and the key people move, there is only one final piece left. And once that piece moves too, everything changes. And this is where the situation stops being hypothetical and starts becoming inevitable. Because once you understand what McLaren is building, you realize this is not about today. It's about what happens next. Because Lambiase is not arriving alone. He's arriving with knowledge, with systems, with a complete understanding of how Red Bull operates at the highest level. And that kind of knowledge doesn't just improve a team, it transforms it. But here's the detail that changes everything. McLaren is not under pressure. They're not collapsing. They're not trying to fix a broken structure. They're growing. Calmly. Confidently. With direction. Which means when Lambiase arrives, he's not stepping into chaos. He's stepping into stability. And that's the perfect environment to rebuild something powerful. Now compare that to Red Bull. Because while McLaren is preparing for the future, Red Bull is trying to protect the present. Losing key people. Adjusting roles. Trying to maintain performance, while the structure underneath is shifting. And that creates a gap. Not just in speed. In clarity. In confidence. In direction. And in Formula 1, that gap grows faster than anyone expects. But here's where it all leads to something much bigger. Because when you move the system, when you move the leadership, when you move the understanding of how to win, there is only one piece left that completes the entire picture. The driver. And McLaren knows it. They understand that having the system is not enough. You need the one person who can maximize it. The one who already knows how it works. The one who has lived inside that structure for years. Max Verstappen. And suddenly, this doesn't feel like a coincidence anymore. It feels like preparation. Because if you were planning the perfect move, you wouldn't start with the driver. You would start with everything around him. You would build the environment first. Make it familiar. Make it comfortable. Make it competitive. And then, you make the final move. And that's exactly what this looks like. Step by step. Piece by piece. Until the moment arrives. Because here's the reality. If Verstappen ever decides to leave Red Bull, he won't choose based on emotion. He'll choose based on where he can win. Immediately. Consistently. Without needing time to adapt. And right now, McLaren is becoming that place. Not by chance. By design. And when that design is complete, when every piece is in position, there will be one question left. Not whether Verstappen can leave, but whether there is any reason for him to stay. And when a driver like him starts asking that question, the answer is usually already decided. And if everything we've seen so far is the setup, then what comes next is the execution. Because there is a moment in Formula One where preparation turns into action, where plans stop being invisible and start becoming real. And that moment is getting closer. Because right now, McLaren doesn't need Verstappen. Not yet. They're building, stabilizing, perfecting the structure. But once that structure is complete, everything changes. Because then, they don't need to convince him. They attract him. Naturally. And that's a completely different situation. Because drivers like Verstappen don't move for promises. They move for certainty. For environments where everything is already in place. Where they can step in and win immediately. And that's exactly what McLaren is creating. But here's where it becomes critical. Because Red Bull is running out of something very important. Time. Not officially. Not on paper. But internally. Because every race weekend, every small inconsistency, every sign that the system is no longer perfect, pushes Verstappen closer to one realization. That what he had is no longer guaranteed. And once that realization becomes clear, everything accelerates. Because at that point, he's no longer waiting to see if things improve. He's deciding what to do next. And this is where the final shift happens. Because until now, Red Bull has been in control. They had the best car, the best structure, the best driver. Everything revolved around them. But now, control is starting to move. Slowly, quietly, toward a team that is preparing instead of reacting. Toward a team that is building instead of holding on. Toward a team that understands exactly what it takes to take the next step. And that's what makes this moment so important. Because when the balance of power begins to shift, it doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself. Through decisions. Through movements. Through changes that seem small until they connect. And when you connect them, you see the full picture. Lambiase leaves. McLaren builds. Red Bull adjusts. Verstappen adapts. And all of it points in the same direction. Toward a decision that hasn't been made publicly, but is getting closer every single race. Because in the end, this was never just about one engineer leaving. It was about what that exit made possible. A new structure. A new opportunity. A new future. That might already be waiting. And if that future becomes reality, then everything we're watching right now won't feel surprising. It will feel inevitable. Like something that was always going to happen. From the moment the first piece moved. From the moment Lambiase chose to leave Red Bull. And the only thing left to find out is when the final piece makes its move. And when that final piece moves, there is no going back. Because in Formula One, the biggest shifts don't happen when everyone is watching. They happen quietly, in the background. Until suddenly, they're impossible to ignore. And this is exactly where we are now. Because everything has been building toward one single moment. Not the announcement. Not the headline. The decision. The one Verstappen hasn't made publicly, but is getting closer to with every race. Because now, all the variables are in place. Red Bull is no longer the perfect machine. The structure is changing. The people are leaving. The certainty is fading. And on the other side, there is a team building something that feels complete, familiar, ready. And that's what changes everything. Because when a driver like Verstappen looks at his future, he doesn't think about loyalty. He doesn't think about history. He thinks about one thing. Where can I win without compromise? And for the first time in years, that answer is no longer automatically Red Bull. And that's the real impact of Lambiase's exit. Not what it did in the moment, but what it unlocked. Because it created an alternative. A real one. A credible one. A dangerous one. And now, that alternative is growing stronger with every passing week. while Red Bull is trying to hold everything together. And that contrast is what will ultimately decide everything. But here's the final truth. Because by the time the world sees the move, by the time it becomes official, by the time the headlines explode, it will already be over. The decision will have been made. Quietly, carefully, exactly the way Verstappen operates. And when that happens, people will look back at this moment, at this exact sequence, and realize something. It didn't start with a transfer. It didn't start with a contract. It started with a departure. One decision. That set everything in motion. One piece. That moved first. Because in Formula One, you don't see the future when it happens. You see it when it's already too late to stop it.